It is no secret that national Democrats hope to turn North Carolina blue in 2020, including the U.S. Senate seat held by Republican Thom Tillis, who is seeking re-election. But now we've gotten an inside look at the national Democrats' strategy to win that Senate seat, and it came through leaked audio of a Democratic state legislator with firsthand knowledge. Rick Henderson is following the story. Rick, of course, is editor-in-chief of Carolina Journal. Welcome back.
Thank you, Donna.
Oh, well, this is very intriguing, and it definitely is election time. State Senator Jeff Jackson, out of the Mecklenburg area, was part of a class at UNC-Charlotte. He made some comments, and now we all know what they were.
Right. He was speaking to a class that Jim Morrill, who's a Charlotte Observer political reporter, a longtime legislative reporter, was teaching at UNC-Charlotte. And the class, basically Jeff Jackson was brought in to talk about the political process and the like. And one of the students in the class apparently recorded the lecture and leaked information from the lecture, the audio part of the recording, which basically said that Jeff Jackson says, I was recruited by the National Democratic Party to potentially be a candidate to run against Thom Tillis in 2020. And Chuck Schumer, who was the lead Democrat of the Senate and heading up the Senate fundraising, was telling me how I was going to run my campaign.
And that's where it gets really, really interesting, because apparently Jeff Jackson went up to D.C. and said to Senator Schumer, look, I'm going to go out and campaign. I'm going to talk to constituents. I'm going to do town halls. And the retort, according to Jackson, from Senator Schumer was fascinating.
Yeah, I said no. I don't think so.
Nice talking to you.
What we're going to do is we're going to put you, as Jeff Jackson put it, in a windowless basement. You're going to be on the phone all the time raising money, and 80% of your time will be spent raising money on the phone, and we're going to take that money and we're going to use it to run negative ads against Thom Tillis. Now, that's not what Jackson wanted to do at all. As you said, he wanted to go out, he wanted to meet with constituents, he wanted to raise issues, he wanted to pitch the Democratic message around North Carolina, because people may not be familiar with him because he is a state senator from Mecklenburg County. And so his idea was to do, in a way, what Dan Forrest did during his two runs for lieutenant governor, and that is go around the state so that everybody knows who he is. But Schumer said, no, I don't think so. We're going to have you down here, beating the bushes for money, shaking down people for campaign contributions that we can then convert into television ads and radio ads and mailers and things like that to attack Tillis.
So at that point, apparently Jackson says, well, this isn't my kind of thing. I'm not going to do this. But then in the meantime, other Democrats in North Carolina have stepped forward to seek the nomination, and it looks like Cal Cunningham is the person who's getting some sort of big support.
Yeah, and it looks like Cal Cunningham is the guy who said, okay, I'll sit in the basement if that's what you want me to do, because he has gotten the endorsement of all of the major national mainstream Democratic organizations. He also is someone who has gotten some negative feedback from some of his Democratic rivals who were saying, wait a minute, this guy served a term in the legislature. He's been a perennial candidate, non-winning candidate in a number of races, including some statewide races. It looks like he's the guy that you just put up there because he's going to do whatever you say, Washington Democrats, and not going to represent North Carolina necessarily. And so Senator Erica Smith from Northampton County has been particularly vocal about that because, of course, the Democratic Party is very aware of issues such as gender and racial diversity, and African-American woman running for a Senate seat against a white male, and all of a sudden the Democrats' choice is yet another white male, and so that's caused a lot of tension.
And in fact, Senator Smith was so unhappy with this situation that she actually commented on the record to National Review, which is the publication to which this audio was leaked, apparently by a student who was in that class.
Right. So she's not happy about it at all, and I think I don't know how unhappy state Democrats are with this whole situation. I think they want to beat Thom Tillis more than anything else, but it was a fascinating peek behind the curtain as how national campaigns or how national campaigns run in here. I mean, we've run into a similar sort of storyline with the redistricting lawsuit that the Democratic group led by former Attorney General Eric Holder has filed in North Carolina to challenge the congressional districts. Again, this is people coming in from out of state telling local Democrats what to do. Representative Robert Reeves is someone who has resisted this, but you see this again, that the groups come in, they say, this is how you're going to run your campaign, or this is what we're going to do. We're going to call all the shots. You just smile and be nice, and we'll tell you how you're going to run your operation.
Well, if anything, Rick, it certainly confirms that the North Carolina Senate seat that Thom Tillis holds right now is critical to Democrats. They want it really, really badly. How important is it to what happens in 2020 with the presidential election and everything that will be going on?
Well, it's really important because there are a handful of Senate seats across the country in which you have an incumbent who's running for re-election who is considered to be vulnerable right now. The Tillis situation is particularly interesting because he's never really had a highly positive net approval rating throughout his tenure in the Senate. I mean, you have some other cases such as Arizona with Martha McSally and the like, where she's someone who was appointed to take an open seat, and so she's actually running for the first time in the 2020 race. But with the Tillis situation, you have someone who was elected in a very contested campaign, who came up down the stretch and took over from Kay Hagan at the very last minute when he ran that race. And now he is considered to be vulnerable simply because Republicans think it's going to be, again, a very, very tight race, both nationally and in North Carolina. And his approval numbers have never been as high as an incumbent senator would like.
Rick, should people who are listening to us right now be turned off by this audio and what the National Democratic strategy is? Or really, is this just the way it works and you usually just don't hear about it?
Well, I think that's basically the lesson to take away from it is that, I think they should be upset about the fact that this is how these operations work, that the candidates themselves are not seen as autonomous individuals who are actually working for their constituents, but they're just simply seen as pawns of a national machine. And so that's something people should be upset about. The fact that we did get this actual peek behind the curtain and that we saw how it happened, and we saw a member of the North Carolina General Assembly who was being openly recruited to run for the seat say, no thanks, I don't want to do that. I mean, that's much to, I think, Senator Jackson's credit that he did that. But I think it is something that both should upset people at the fact that that's what the expectation is for candidates running on the national scene, but also it should sort of let people know, well, yeah, that's how it goes.
Well, it does seem that that's how it goes, and the appeal of negative advertising, and that's why we see them all the time, even though a lot of times candidates and parties will say, no, we're not going to do that. We're just going to try to showcase the differences in what our candidate believes versus our opposition. But when it gets down to it, people respond to these negative messages.
Well, they do. They respond to basically discussions of the issues, discussions of positions, and usually the discussions on positions are that other person's position on issue X, Y, and Z is awful.
Right. So he or she is a bad guy, bad woman. Yeah.
Right. And, of course, the candidates themselves, as long as these ads are not run through their campaign fund, the candidates have no control over that message. So it's not as if you need to denounce this commercial. Well, you could say, I don't agree with the message, but you can't do anything about it because if you attempted to, you would be violating the law yourself.